Let's do it.
Call the Lake Management meeting to order at 7:00 PM. And the meeting is being recorded. Anyone else who is recording this meeting needs to identify themselves to me as the chair. I'll do the attendance for the list. I gotta get my list out. Thought I had it out.
It's. You want me to do it?
I got it. Okay, so Norm Cheever here, Mike Coombs here, Malcolm DeBay here, Dick Randall's here, Scotty Graves here, Eric Muller here, Paul Murphy here, Paul Yocum here. Okay, and that's everybody here, and Ellen Third is on the other end of the
Zoom.
from home, from Zoom.
And no guests on Zoom either.
No guests yet.
No guests.
Okay. First thing is the minutes from the 5/8 meeting, from the May 8th meeting. If anybody has any comments, changes, corrections?
I didn't have any. I don't have any.
Okay,
Well, sounds like it's food.
So I'll make a motion to accept the meeting.
okay.
It says Rich.
Second.
Mike C, Scotty. G. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, gotta go down the checklist. Norm Fever,
Aye.
Mike Coombs,
Aye.
Malcolm DeBay,
Aye.
Dick Randall's aye. Scotty Graves.
Aye.
Eric Muller.
Aye.
Paul Murphy. Aye. Paul Yocum.
Aye.
Okay, affirmed. Alrighty, we can get a move on. First thing is Conservation Commission. Norm,
Yes,
You're up for
update
that.
from Monday's meeting. We approved a project for a addition to an existing house at 105 Point Grove Road, right next to the old Louis B's blackboard today. Yeah, this is a very small addition, but it was approved. It's in the 100-foot buffer zone. Then I kind of surprised everybody with my first official meeting as chairman. I had two lists, one on North Pond with 37 line item projects that need to be completed to become compliant, and I asked for names
Okay.
to sign up. It went over like a lead balloon, but I got names. Then I presented another list of non-North Pond projects and asked for volunteers to be the lead on those. And I got names, so we're gonna become more of an active commission.
good.
Excellent.
Yeah, because it's tough to, one person doing it.
That's right. Yep. Report from Suffield Conservation meetings, I didn't attend the last meeting because of another meeting in town here, but there wasn't anything on the agenda. But just to report, I keep an eye on 623 Forest in West Suffield. If you've gone by in your boat, you'll see how big the project is.
Oh, I saw it.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Hmm.
and I'm surprised that hillside is stable with no vegetation.
I know.
Especially with all the rain we've had.
Yeah,
Right.
I went by last weekend, it was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's Dick Burrell's.
No,
Dick Burrell's doing his whole hill over.
was he the one doing the hill?
Well, it looks like a new house up there.
Well, it's new.
Relative.
7, 8 years. ago.
Yeah.
Beautiful house.
So far, the silt fence and hay bales are holding up.
Okay,
Great.
So it's important.
So that is the Concom update. From an MPIC standpoint. In your package, you see copies. Remember last meeting, we had two reports that were different.
Yeah.
So I reviewed them and they were actually both wrong. Yeah, so in your package, you've got the corrected ones.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Pages 13 through 17. Yeah, 13. The first ones he's talking about are 13.
Oh, good.
These are correct?
These are correct.
Yeah, okay.
And also not in the hand package that you have here, but on the reading file you sent. You also have the document that MPIC has produced for changes to the master plan. Which would include if you want to transfer an action item, cancel an action item, modify an action item, make a new action item. How to handle an unfunded action item after you did all the work. And how to handle the one that's challenged for validity or legality, you know, just based upon actually our conversation on one of our projects.
Yeah.
And then how to remove a support action item. So that's in your package and you have that. Okay, great. Thank you. I think that's my update.
Do you want to go over anything on those while they're here, or is it for reading now?
It's just for reading.
Let everybody digest it.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to make a change, then we'll look it up and
Yeah,
go through the process to make a change.
okay.
Okay. We need to take our time to go through it now.
Okay. I don't see Michelle.
Nope.
No, so we don't have a CRC update, so we can continue.
Right, I gave that presentation at the last CRC meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
129 North Lake Ave, which is the Lily Drive, that whole thing, which starts on
6 through 8.
through 8.
I did read that, Eric. It's a nice presentation.
Okay.
I did read it. It's good.
So, I don't know if you have an update, Norm, from
From the CAO, no update yet.
nothing.
It's in her hands. She enthusiastically accepted the responsibility to take it, so.
Oh, okay.
Great.
I haven't heard of it, so.
I'll just make a note with DAO, okay.
Yeah.
And as I noted in here, you can read what I put in, but, there was a bit of response from Bacon Wilson, our town council, you know, and so they had already gone through this, and ruled that you can't give it away, you can't. And that prompted, by the way, there's quite a few, that I went in and this was for Nicole, our CAO. And so I highlighted and explained about half a dozen that are around the lakes that have been problems in the past that were solved incorrectly, where people acquired land that they weren't supposed to. They, took over a paper road.
Yeah.
They took over, and here's the thing you gotta be careful of, because there are many of the deeds, and I've researched this before, because there've been complaints, and so I researched the deeds. And there are many deeds and many of those old, small lot subdivision, lake subdivisions that say you have access to the water. And on the plan for the subdivision is the access, it's defined. And so you can't block that, you can't take it over. There's another one that there were actually two of them where there are beaches that were on the original subdivision plans.
They're not there anymore.
And they're not there, they're blocked off by.
By grass. Some people put sprinklers out there.
Oh, yeah. And
It's just the edge of their property.
yeah, and so, it's been a myriad of things like that, and Nicole is of a mindset, she knows what the state law is and what what laws govern that. And you can't just walk in and take over something that belongs to the public, or in the case of many of these subdivisions.
Somebody else's deed.
Right, it's a
Deeded
deeded
access.
access. It doesn't say you have a right to go put a dock down there, but you have a right to go down there and put your feet in the water and go fishing and whatever the heck you want. So that's gotta be careful, because now if you take something away, you're taking away rights that are deeded rights. And that wound up with a suit already, on one of the roads. because a guy took it over and literally took it over. And, you know, made it his land. And then wouldn't let him
remember that.
posted no trespassing. And the actual road, everything and the access goes right down to the waterfront.
So the CAO's got this in her hands. and-
Yes, yep,
Okay,
so it's good. Canal Brook and Great Brook, dredging update. It's status quo, nothing has changed, the funding has not been released yet by the feds. However, I think I explained in the last one, they've gotten two major projects going on the Cape. That from funding, from the same funding, so there's. The way he described it was those that were already designed and permitted. Then they were able to release the construction funding. Where you're going in to do the detailed design, those are held up right now. Because that's not something that was already committed. So that's what we said. So we'll keep trying. He does respond to my phone calls and also to my emails, so it's good. 159 Berkshire, which starts on page 18.
yeah, so. Both, so Dick, myself and Norm have all commented
Weighed in.
now,
And you can read our comments.
respectfully.
Yeah,
Um,
so the problem is that we do not have a schedule. We're now 6 years into this from the event. Cause I was wrong when I said, I thought it was 2019, it's actually December 2018.
Wow.
So, you know, December 2024 was 6 years, so we're 6.5 years into it from when the event occurred. And no action yet to fix it.
so the claim here is that there is a hard deadline of November 28th, 2025.
Right.
I asked the question, I put him on the spot, and asked the question, okay, in that case, will you then, if they fail to meet that date, will you immediately support fines starting? And he didn't want to commit to that. I understand, he didn't want to commit to that. Norm, I thought, had a very good suggestion here, which is probably this would be a wise time because there's enough time for him to do something. It's not like, oh, next week
Yeah,
and then
right.
you're dead. To have the towns send a registered letter basically saying, hey, these are your, this is the deadline. If you miss it, we're gonna start fining you immediately.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great idea. I have not heard anything
I
back.
haven't seen anything back.
You know,
on it.
you saw me ask the
Yeah.
question, what do you think about that? If I understand the responsibility for who decides that we should implement fines has changed, so that is now Randy, I believe.
Yeah, and actually on page 30, you'll see the fine was issued by,
And that's never been paid, I'm sure.
yeah,
18,000.
right. And $300 a day for non-compliant.
I guess it's something, but.
Well, it's
Somebody-
only expensive if you actually
Enforce
enforce it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just a piece of paper that has a bunch
Yeah.
of numbers on it. So, so I think, we'll just kind of, I continue to push, that was a few days ago that I said, okay, hey, I think Norm's got a great idea here. How
Yeah,
about we do that? So I don't know how we get that to happen. Does that have to come from Randy? The letter.
Yeah, who else well, Nicole is on this, Randy,
So I mean, you're in here reasonably often.
yeah,
Would you be willing to just go talk to Nicole and say, hey, can we just send the letter out?
yeah, yeah.
I think Norm's got it laid out very nicely here. We just do exactly what you suggested. And just send a certified letter, make it clear, if this doesn't happen, we're gonna start issuing fines. And let's do one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
The other thing I want to ask, because you made a comment that it was outside Concom's jurisdiction, which I agree because of the 100 feet. But it's an intermittent stream, which you do have jurisdiction over, that he moved.
Well, I don't know if he actually moved.
He did. Oh, yeah, he absolutely did move it.
Shouldn't Comcom send a letter?
No.
No?
No.
Randy should send it or us?
It should be stormwater, it should be,
It was taken over by
Could be
the
Randy.
planning board and now it's shifted to DPW.
right.
Maybe you should ask Randy, I don't know if you asked Nicole or Randy, did you send a letter?
Yeah, well, I was asking Randy, but I'm just,
You're thinking we should send it?
no,
No.
no, no, no.
No, it can't come from us.
No, no,
We have no
no,
enforcement.
either Randy or
We have
Nicole.
no enforcement.
I'm just thinking if you
But
potentially ask
maybe,
Nicole.
a reply in there would help, you know, to, another just say,
Yeah,
are we gonna?
I don't think I'm gonna get a response.
That's all right, if you send that, then I can go.
Okay, all right, I can send another,
Yeah, because I think it's a
Message.
great suggestion.
You might wanna give it a few days then.
Yeah,
did,
Yeah, cause you,
it's already,
you know, it's just, you know, we keep,
I know,
kicking the
I
can.
know.
Yeah.
yeah,
I have two maybe unrelated bits of information about 159.
Okay.
My wife happens to know the next door neighbor. And two things. Number one, he was pretty sure that the state was there doing a survey of 159 Berkshire Ave.
Oh, that's weird.
That's interesting.
And you know, he's got that big boulder out front
Yeah.
with his address on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They've told him to move it and he's.
Oh, no
and
kidding.
He already has moved it.
that's why it got moved,
Yeah,
cause I saw it, it's not where
but
it
it
was.
was in the
Why
right
did
of
they
way.
tell him to move it?
because it wasn't on his property. I assume.
Yeah.
Street.
Now, why were they surveying? I have no idea.
Interesting.
And the second piece of information is the neighbor said that the owner of 159 is not in good health.
Oh, geez.
Guess he just had his second major surgery.
Hmm.
So,
Okay. Well, at least we got an update. Thank you.
Yep.
So next on the hit parade, the.
Like you do, fall asleep?
Oh, there he is. So
Drilla, the money does flow.
Mike just, DeBay just joined us. Alan, Mike DeBay just joined us.
I don't see him.
No, he's here.
Way down here.
Oh, he's here. Oh, he's there. Okay. Thought it was on Zoom. That was good.
Okay, so the next thing was the hydrilla, grant, $250,000 grant. We did get the year 2 funding, which is really good. So it's really 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. We shaved it back a little bit just to make sure we, you know, what we authorized, there's still a little bit left there, just in case one of the years is worse than the previous one. I issued the 2 purchase orders because that was, we had the 2 estimates. Issued one to Stantec and one to Solitude. So they're ready to go.
Okay.
And we actually have dates when they're gonna be,
Yeah.
coming to do the survey. And then there's a flexible time for treatment because so far the weeds are not growing that fast.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of this is the relatively cool nights we've had, you know.
Yeah.
We're not getting that warm water. When we were down a week ago, when I was there with the divers, Monday last, and the water temperature was 48, I think. That's still pretty good. The weed growth isn't that fast when it's that. So if that turns out when they do the survey that there's a whole scenario, then they'll delay the hydrilla plot, depending on the size of the Eurasian water milfoil and the curly pondweed. They may wind up splitting it and doing 2 treatments, and we've got funding to do that. So, anyway, that's moving along. The Mass DEP grant success, I gave you now, the only thing I still haven't been able to get is I want to be able to give you the actual locations. They're cited in the spreadsheets, right? But I can actually if I could get my emails back, I could give you,
Yeah, that's what I'd really like, because then I can compare those to our sampling locations.
yeah.
And be able to tell.
But the
one from
ones, the
state
ones,
which
I can
line
tell
up.
you which ones are the ones where I think you sampled. Um,
Yeah, so let's do that separately.
You know,
I
you and I
got,
have
I got
talked.
11 locations and yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
Or tell me the locations you have and I'll tell you if there was a,
Right.
yeah.
yep.
Okay. And then. The lights and for the buoys, I passed this around, Mike, you didn't see it, but. That. Mark. With at his training shop in Hartford, where they teach kids how to be machinists and whatnot. He made that, he and I played around with the design and so that one, what's really nice about it is that fits the old buoys and the new buoys, hence the big hole in the center and the 3 ears. Because the new buoys have three brass inserts, the old buoys have a 1/2 inch rod sticking out the top.
Okay.
So, you know,
When are these gonna be installed?
well, like what he's gotta do, I just have this one right now, but let me explain what's left to do, and he's doing it. He's actually got 6 of them all done like
Oh,
this.
okay.
But he's got a line bore so that you can, trap the, let's see, I gotta think of what happens here. Cause it's gonna be threaded in here and a clearance hole, so you can put a tool through to get to a screw in here, stainless.
Yeah.
So that part he's doing now, and they purchased the cage that goes over the top, you have a picture of the cage,
Mhm.
they are rugged.
Very good.
So, and they're gonna order the lights, so they're gonna start. CRC is paying for the lights, and so he'll be ordering. He and I have already talked about which ones you wanna do first. And, you know, start chunking away at them. And the people that make the buoys are very interested in the design. They'll be talking to him about maybe under a contract where they could build these things for them.
So get a patent on them.
Yeah.
That's what I was just gonna say.
I don't know.
No,
I don't know
that
that
you can
patentable.
patent that,
No.
but not with a meaningful patent.
Yeah, cause you could do it any
Change it.
bazillion different
You can
ways.
change it with one little.
Yeah. So at any rate,
But you have a design.
and those are heavy duty, let me tell you, that's not gonna, you know. Can take.
We'll see what they do.
Take a pretty good hit. Now, before, there was one thing that we do wanna go over this, before we get done, but before I forget. June 12th, Ellen is not available for that meeting, so that's would be our next meeting. Do you,
I won't be available on. the
you won't
call.
be available, so, then we probably should just can the next one, we'll have somebody to run it.
I can run the meeting.
Can you run the meeting?
I can run it if you want me to.
Yeah, you got access to,
Well, I'll need either Ellen's or your access.
all right.
Yeah.
All right.
There you go.
Okay, so we'll continue with having one on June 12th. Everybody else is gonna be here? Cause we need a quorum.
I'll have to check, but I presume so.
Yeah.
God willing.
Yeah, look, great. I'm not looking at the brown side of the grass.
Yeah.
I can't promise it.
Okay, so let's,
And on that cheery thought.
yeah, let's put this in.
Dude,
Well, coming out of Florida, everybody talks like that.
I see.
All right.
Okay, you were down there for a while. I
Look golf, it's better to be looking down at the golf ball than up at the golf.
Yeah, yeah,
tee.
yeah.
We go through that every day down there.
Do they have to pool standings up in the
Yeah,
clubhouse?
that's it.
Who went
that one
next?
has an
That's
OG on it.
Yeah, the only other thing you didn't touch on, Eric, yeah, the excavation going on Mountain and Babs Road. You did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so,
That's kind of far away from where that stream is actually, right?
well, no, it actually feeds right into it.
I thought the stream is way down on Mountain Road, almost across.
If you look at the map that I gave you in here,
Hmm.
you'll see there's a series of ponds that are on Markowski's land. One is on Bab Road that you see all the time when you drive Bab Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the right-hand side, a
You
mucky,
see it.
Right.
yucky looking.
Yeah.
Now, that's where, that actually goes under the road
And out
and
to the
goes
lake.
and out to the lake, and it comes out at Chestnut Circle. And the gentleman who owns the property at the mouth of it, on Congamon, in other words, he owns both sides. So, and good friend, and I would be happy to ask him if you want to be able to go over and sample there.
Well, Ken put in his 2 cents, which is worth more than 2 cents, which was that basically he thought I could get most of the information that we need by doing a sample right where that meets the lake.
Yeah, and the way I kind of read it, if you stayed in so that you don't get a wash from the lake,
Right,
so you're getting what's coming to the lakes. And that's where, and
Someone
this,
put a dock right there.
it's my
that
next door
little piece of
neighbor's, brother, So-
They own it,
and I see him all the time.
and I don't know if they
So,
get permission from someone to put it.
when I sample on Thursday,
Doesn't
yeah,
even reach.
if
the
I
main
can get in
road.
there with Rick's boat.
Yeah.
Rick and I will
Boats on
go
it.
out and do the sample. If we get in there with Rick's
So you'll
boat,
see
then I'll
one over
grab a
here.
sample from there.
Okay.
No,
And we'll
Steve
take,
has
we
one
can bring that to the lab with
They have
the
two
others.
roads there.
And if you'd like me to
If
call
not, then I'll
I
just.
saw that
go
go
another
in last
time
fall.
with a canoe or
It's
something.
already in again.
But if you'd like me to call him or anything, I will.
Okay, and
Let me
we,
know.
we may need to
It's
do
just-
that.
well, you
What
can't
I
tell
think
when
is
you're
let's
on the lake,
first
but
do
you'll
this,
see
Right,
see
this
what
way.
we
You know, this
see.
house,
You know, and then if there's something that we
house.
see that goes, ooh, we should go
And
look
then
at
the
something
Go
else,
further up.
then we'll go look.
It doesn't go, and I don't know how to
Foskey
get down.
going
except
over
for
there,
people.
cause it looks like they've dug up those
Everything.
ponds.
Yeah,
I was wondering if they had
Just the-
springs coming in there and they just decided to get rid of the muck and have ponds.
I don't know.
Because they cleared out 3 sections.
Yeah, there are 3 major ponds have been created over
Yeah.
there. And he's taking all the muck out of them and piling it and,
On the edges and
And dry.
getting rid of it.
yeah.
Did they use that field?
He's been using it in the fields too. He's been filling in
Yeah.
the low spots
Mhm.
with that.
He's been filling in that gully for a long
Yeah,
time, for
yeah.
years now.
I did
That was
notify,
called, when I was a kid, that was called Turtle Pond, that area
Exactly.
there, because you
Then
have a
maybe
little-
he's
little
open them
wooden
back
bridge that
up.
went across it.
Yes.
Behind the corner.
Yeah.
Behind the house on the corner there. When
Yeah.
you first go in Holiday,
here was the kid.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
it's a severe right behind that house was a little wooden bridge that went across. And there was a trap behind the thing with, they catch little minnows in it and
Oh
all
my
that kind of
God.
stuff back in the day. It was like a bait.
Anyway,
well.
I did, notify the Suffield Conservation Agent about that pond and all the activity was there and
Yeah,
said you might wanna check into this, but he never responded to me.
Okay.
But if you get some water samples that
that
are,
would help.
then I act from our end.
Yeah, okay.
From
Yeah.
Southwick end.
We find out that it's,
Yeah,
And and Ken's,
I'm
Ken's
pretty
point
sure that's
was-
gonna be pretty nasty water coming in.
right, and Ken's point was, really what we're concerned about with the lake is what comes into the lake.
Yeah.
Whatever's going on there is going on there, but what comes into the lake is what would concern us.
It definitely flows underneath Bab Road. And,
Really, I
and
question that.
Oh, yeah.
comes right out there.
We know it does.
And when they built that canal, if you look at the original going way back, look at the original configuration of it, it was wide, you could take boats up and down it.
Oh,
Because they sold it as waterfront,
Yeah,
you have waterfront
Well,
access.
Ernowitz opened that up.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
He dug it out.
he dug it out wide,
Yeah.
but it's all filled in now.
Another illegal dock, wooden dock at the end of the beach that.
Filled in at the end.
Yeah, yeah.
That's because Hernowitz wouldn't let them open it back up.
Hey,
Got in a fight with the neighbors. Is that what he did?
I think the brother still lives in that house though.
Huh?
The brother still lives in that.
No,
brother,
it's his nephew.
Yeah.
Nephew.
Nephew.
Brothers, they're both dead.
yeah, so, anyway,
You want me to just go? through
yeah,
this
we're gonna
quickly?
go through it quick,
Sure,
you can look on.
so, anyway,
And then we
okay.
make that.
This is the presentation, you did it.
Well, I think they can see it.
CRC.
So, yeah, so I gave this at the CRC meeting. So, first I just kind of reviewed what we're doing for water quality. Yeah, this is kind of an outline. I talked about what we're doing for water quality, activities and conditions summary and water level discussion. All stuff people were pretty interested in. And highlighting in more than one place, the kind of cooperation you see here, between the towns of Southwick, Suffield and CRC, for example, the funding of the weed treatment. And so, water quality, you guys know this, monitoring, we're making measurements of water chemistry versus depth in all three lakes, water sampling at the surface and at depth and lab evaluation of those. And I talk later, we also, Norm is doing measurements at the end of his dock on a daily basis. Management, analysis of that data, helps to drive rapid decision-making. Back when we needed rapid decision-making because of algae blooms, we haven't had them.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, this is 5 years in a row. And built the data we needed to be able to take action. So just, highlighting kind of the current activities, canal restoration, Canal Brook restoration, that's NRCS. Great Brook restoration, you guys know about all this. And the NRCS focus, of course, is to dredge or mechanically remove blockages and all that nutrient.
Restore the original.
Restore the canal, and of course, the hydrilla grant that you have been
And
talking
you
about.
said in there, because I did read it, and your alum treatment really has 5 years now without a problem.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
so that's sort of here,
And
so
I
the alum
sent
treatment
that-
is,
the alum treatment information, by the way, I did convey that to Suffield because the DPW director, it's his budget that the dollars come out of to do the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, so it's out of his budget. And I explained in the last one of my last emails that the town of Southwick coughed up basically
$850,000.
$850,000 to do an alum treatment.
So, fifth year of post-treatment monitoring, 2024, we're now into year 6. So there's monthly measurements, depth profiles, as I mentioned, taking samples, and then daily turbidity and chlorophyll A readings off the end of your dock.
What do we hope to get for that time frame for that alum treatment? How long are we hoping for?
20 years.
Yeah.
20 years.
20 years. And algae bloom management, again, no blooms now, 5th year in a row. And before this 1 year, the first year where we didn't have a bloom was the first time in more than a decade, so it was a big deal. The clarity improvements that we observed in 2020 through 2023 continued in 24, but were not quite as good as they had been in 23. This year right now is not quite as good also. It's similar to 24. Don't know yet, Ken and I have talked about it. He's like, that you had a lot of rain. There's a lot of things that can
Huge
affect
amount of
that.
rain. Yeah.
There's a lot of things that can affect that. So, and then, just showing some example data, so if you look at the circled area up there, if, the vertical scale is depth in meters and the horizontal scale is how much dissolved oxygen there is in there. And if you see that the first curve all the way over toward the left, you can see that's all oxygen depleted area. And then these new curves are the ones after the treatment. And there's that huge volume of water that now has oxygen that didn't have oxygen before.
That's really cool. That's cool.
Yeah,
Good data.
and that's why we're not getting the algae blooms, because we have the oxygen, because we inactivated the phosphorus. So the dredging, I think everybody here is very, very familiar with this. We went for this grant to do the south ramp. Did not get the money. One of the things which I pointed out at the CRC meeting is, when you go through the process of doing the work to put this together, it's not getting it granted does not make that thing a dead document. Because that work was still done, and so you have a thing that's ready to go the next opportunity. That work is still there.
Yeah.
And so then basically you just keep your eyes and ears open, and when you see an opportunity, the nice thing is then you don't have to redo all that work, right? Because you take the thing and go, blow the dust off it. and-
Addendum.
Resubmit.
Right, exactly.
Due date, resubmit.
Hydrilla grant, again, everybody here is very familiar with it. We're in year 2 of this 3-year grant. So that's good because we are seeing hydrilla.
And they already, the scientist, the wetland scientist from DCR has already been out and did some.
Was that
Look-see.
Kara?
Yeah,
in here?
yeah,
Okay.
and he has, she did not find any, that's why they kind of kicked the can down the road for when they're gonna do the actual survey. Did not find evidence of hydrilla, so. But it's, the water's too cold for it to grow, cause it needs much warmer water than the other two invasives. So, you know, we'll see, they're keeping an eye on it, and we'll know better, not next week, the week after. When they come out the first week in June, they're doing the sampling.
So back in 23, NRCS, completed this HIPAA report that we looked through. We had a very good dialogue with them. The organization that provided the report basically did what they were asked. But what they were asked, we actually really wanted them to look at a slightly different problem, because they basically came up with a paper design for dealing with the 500-year flood.
Yeah.
And that paper design, when you looked at it, was really intractable. They were like, yeah, you can't do it. Because, for example, just the openings of the culverts between the lakes aren't big enough.
To handle
If you wanted
500-year
to
flood.
deal with a 500-year flood. You'd have to like tear those down and build new bridges. And I mean, it was like, okay. But they were very happy to engage when we said, look, what we're more interested in is mitigating the sort of floods we see regularly, and in having the ability to mitigate larger floods that we see coming. Because when we get a big flood, we don't get flash floods. What we get is, when we get a big flood, there's a hurricane that's coming this way.
Towards us, right?
And we know it's coming this way, so we don't have to like wait for it to dump, 2.5 feet of rain on us and try and get all the water out tomorrow. We can know that it's coming and start lowering if we had the ability to do that. And so we all sort of agreed that the boots on the ground study would be focused on that, on the sort of floods that, we've got the data to show, hey, look, here are these events, and I'll show them in a later chart. So these are regular things. We'd like to be able to deal with those. And we'd like to be able to deal with stuff where we get, 3, 4, 5 days advance notice, which we typically do.
Take some
And,
action.
where we could take action and start lowering. So that's the idea, and I make the point with regard to cost, because people react to see the number, we don't know what the number is. That's a guesstimate for doing everything. I think we would be very happy if they just restored Canal Brook. It would be wonderful if they also did Great Brook, but even just doing Canal Brook
Yeah.
would be a huge.
Huge,
That would be a huge impact.
and we've said that to them, is priority 1 is Canal Brook.
Right.
2 is Great Brook.
Right, and the numbers won't be cheap for Canal Brook, but it would cost a lot. I think Great Brook's gonna cost a lot more than Canal Brook.
Yeah. And it's, in talking with the engineer at NRCS, and it's kind of like a $15-20 million project for the canal, and another 30 million for Great Brook. So, it's almost like 1/3 and 2/3.
And
You can slide that number back and forth, but it's not 50-50.
And the 1/3 would make a pretty big difference.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, so-
if we had at least a couple of feet drop down
Yeah,
from the weir gates to the other side, then we could do whatever we need with the weir gates, and we would always be able to get rid of good flow.
Right, but
Good
if you
flow.
don't,
We
if you
just
don't
have to
get
make
the
sure we
depth,
don't
if you
flood
don't
out.
get the depth, so the beavers don't keep, if they love 2 feet of water. They
Right.
don't like 8
No
feet of water.
question, no question. I'm just saying, you
Yeah.
need that, enough, you need to dig it out so you can have
and
that
they,
drop.
and they have to dig far enough down
Right.
that us letting the water out doesn't flood out somebody down. there.
Right.
So,
How far does that go? Just to the Massachusetts state border?
no, that can't. That's why it's gotta be NRCS.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't do it.
Yeah.
What does it eventually outflow into?
The Farmington.
Eventually goes to the Farmington.
Right.
And I don't believe you have to clear all the way to the Farmington to
no.
get this thing to work.
If we got
A
down
couple miles.
basically
Mile and a half.
to Route 20,
Uh-huh.
kinda, I mean, that's an easy way to think about it.
Yeah.
Because there's a huge drop when you get down just north of Route 20.
Mhm.
There's a huge drop. And you get
Right.
down in that area, it's done, you know,
You gotta lower the culvert. on
Yeah.
Phelps Road.
Yeah,
That's gotta be.
that's gonna be an orifice, right?
Um, and then I talked about water, water level, we've talked about, what are the causes and controls, a little history. And the excursions we see from the normal range and sort of discussion of effects, so, the biggest thing that affects us is precipitation precipitation in equivalent rain. That's what dominates our lake level.
Right.
We're not a surface fed, we've got a spring fed lake. Our surface feeds are only active when it rains or.
Right. Yeah, we don't have brook coming.
And the precipitation variation is large year to year, month to month, week to week, and it appears to be growing. The excursions appear to be growing over time. I mean, I can't say over 100 years, but if we look over 15 years, 20 years, or in Ken's case, where he's got maybe a 35-year window, he sees the same thing. The excursions appear to be larger. And then, just as a rule of thumb, it depends on the exact situations. We can take out about a 1/4 inch a day out of the lake with our current situation. There are times we can take a little more.
As long as we get flow.
Right.
Yeah.
There are times we can take a little more than that, and there are
Alright.
times we can't take any.
I agree.
If the back of, but it's just a rule of thumb, just to give people the idea. It's like, yeah, so if you see the lake is, if the lake is up by 1 inch too high, it's gonna take us 4 days to get that back,
Yeah,
just roughly.
and the other.
And you can yell and scream, but there isn't anything we can do about it.
Is the canal is not only fed by Congamon, but it's fed by Palmer Brook, Mountain Brook,
Yeah.
Cannon Brook, and all that water coming in winds up with it backflowing, the canal backflowing into Congamon during heavy rainfall.
Right, and so we raise the weir gates to try and
Keep
prevent
them
it.
back.
But it can also.
Right, can also go back the other way.
Come around through the swamps.
Keep in mind that 1/4 inch a day that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Is when it's flowing.
When-
Right.
Not
Yeah.
when the beavers have blocked it up.
Right.
Or the weir.
Details.
That's my comment of
Picking on
maximum
details.
rate.
Mhm.
Yeah, and of course, the other issue is if the water level gets too low, we have basically no ability to compensate. We close up and wait for it to rain.
Open a lot of hydrants.
It's, there's nothing we can do there. And so, if you look at the past 14 years of lake level data, so there have been 8 excursion periods to near flooding or above in the past 14 years. In 2011, in March, August, September, and December. In 2013, in June, very close again in September, not quite. In 17, in 21, in 24. And, we all know the lake is closed to boating when the level gets that high. There's a potential for property damage, well contamination, septic voiding. These are real risks when the water gets real high, and of course, the NRCS program would help. And the other big deal that I point out is erosion is heavily influenced by lake level.
Yeah.
When the lake level's higher, the erosion is a much bigger deal. The water level didn't quite get to closing, but it got high. And so, for example, one of the things personally, I just, me, I'm always out on the water. I just didn't go out and do any water sports because I'm like, the water's too high.
Yeah.
It's legally I can do it, but
You know it's right there.
I know it's right there and it's gonna cause a lot of erosion.
Yeah.
It's, so, if we look sort of, yes, variation's normal, we kind of have these nominal bands. If you evaluate, basically anything in that zone is sort of in nominal, that's kind of normal range. But we get stuff on the highs and the lows. And of course, that crazy low was, a very particular thing that we know. So regular excursions, and the big low in 2016, that was driven by somebody, we have no idea who, lowered the weir gates, dropped the lake by 3 inches by the time we realized what had happened.
Yeah.
And-
Not us. No.
And then,
None
you know,
of us.
we close it back up and it was a dry summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You know,
you
and-
can't fill it.
You know,
Yeah.
we had
Can't
people
fill the hole.
with boats stuck on lifts. You know, one of the stories I relay, and I won't say who it is, someone asked me to help them get their boat off their lift, and what they wanted me to do, once they described it, I refused to do it. What they wanted me to do is they were going to have 3 or 4 people on the lift ready to push the boat, and they wanted me to come by close with my boat and throw a big wave to get their boat to lift up. I'm like,
Crazy.
okay, and what if that boat lifts up and moves forward,
Yeah.
and that
take somebody-
4,000 pound boat crushes those people?
Yeah.
It's like,
It was a poor decision.
yeah. But my point is, that's one of the things, when the water gets low, people
Yep.
do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they don't think of it until later. Yeah, and so I point out, you know,
Yeah.
too high, you know, we get increased erosion. We have the risk of flooding of septic systems and wells and flooding of homes in extreme cases. Too low, we get new navigation hazards, underwater obstructions that were not an issue become an issue, and we've seen that happen. Boats get stuck on lifts, as I mentioned. If it's bad enough, some of the boats may have trouble transiting between the lakes,
Yeah.
depending on boat draft. My boat would be fine, but there are some that wouldn't, and boat launches become compromised. And the other thing is the markers and our floats will drift
Oh, they
over a
go
wider
over, yeah.
range
Yeah.
because the cable's a fixed length. So my point in pointing that out is we can't just go, well, high water's bad, so let's just run the water low. Number one, we'd have to get approval from the state to do that. But even if we had approval from the state to do that, that would then just create a different set of problems.
And and as I've explained before, is that looking at the maps, if you look at the depth maps, there's some really serious problems created by lowering the lake during boating season, because you're not gonna get the boat off your dock. It's
Oh,
gonna be
that's it.
sitting in
In muck.
mud. And that, there are plenty of areas on Congamon that have 2 feet of water. The South Cove, that's all is in there, is a couple feet of water. Because it's over the decades, it is filled in with muck.
The
And,
good news is it's very rare though that we have low water.
oh, yeah, yeah.
Right, very rare.
Very-
Usually it's the other way
The
around.
other way around, yeah, most.
So the long and the short of this is what we all know, which is we need the NRCS thing to move
Yeah,
forward.
right.
What's going to enable us to be able to manage the lake level is the ability to be able to
Get rid of water if we need to.
move water out. I also, the other point which I didn't hit here, but it is worth noting, if we had the ability to do that, we would also see a bit of an improvement in water quality, because when we had high water, we would flow water out.
Right.
Mhm.
And
Instead of it sitting there,
reducing the detention time improves the water quality of the lake.
because especially because it's spring fed.
Right.
So you get this nice clean water coming in from below. And you're getting rid of the surface water.
Right, so if we had the ability to do that, we would do it, would become part of our management, and we would get sort of free improvement in
And the
water
other thing we
quality.
do have the capability of, and have not used it, is that the weir gates are bi-directional, so it's 2 gates.
Yeah, you can
So
lift
you
the
can
bottom.
always raise the bottom if we had someplace for the water to go.
Oh,
Unfortunately,
yeah.
on the other side of it, can't go anywhere.
Good spot.
So
Okay,
they're just trapped in goo.
Ooh.
Yeah.
There you go.
Could you give us an estimate of how many gallons we'd have to take out of the lake to drop it 1 inch?
I
yeah,
did,
yeah,
I did that. It's in,
It's just a surface.
either
Yeah.
2 meetings ago, I put the number in to drop an inch.
I can do it, I'll have to do the
That's a
calculation.
quick Google question. You just go on your phone and ask.
How many
exactly
acres?
What it
No,
is.
no, I can calculate it,
Okay.
because it's just, you know, it's.
I did it
just
based on
convert
the acreage.
acre feet to gallons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big number.
Multiply it by your 465 plus maybe the swamp area too. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's part of the
Yeah.
465, but over and above, maybe, I don't know.
It is a big.
Maybe
I
come up
can
with a
do it,
number.
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can.
It's a lot of millions, I
It's a
can
big
tell you
number.
that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the whole lake's a little over 3 billion gallons. All of it.
Yeah.
So,
Does that count Goose Pond and all of that?
No,
no,
no.
Cause
But
that's
it-
all coming in.
They'll all come
Yeah.
in.
Right, so that would be the other issue, is you start to drop at the other stuff.
When we
that's
say
coming in.
465, does that include the swampy area?
No.
No,
That's
No,
navigable,
no.
more or
it's
less.
a navigable
Navigable, yeah.
part of the lake.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
so now, anybody have anything else?
Give us an update on what the divers found. I was there for 2 hours and then had to leave. Did they find the missing thing for the fourth dock?
They found one.
One cable.
One cable. And they know that then the chain, Mike Westcott's gonna try again. If we ever get a day when you can, without either wind or pouring rain. He's gonna go out with a couple different ways. He's got camera, he's got big magnet. The diver spent probably 3 hours there
Yeah,
and, like from 9 till noon-ish.
alternating, rotating.
Multi divers.
Yeah.
And they hunted and hunted, they got the one, I mean, that one we know exactly where it is, the other one's only 6 feet. From the one they found, and it's 6 feet to the north, due north of the one they found, and they couldn't find it.
Really?
But it took a while just to get that because there was crap wrapped around the chain. And it was embedded in feet of goo. So they spent, and every
A lot
time
of
you
time
move,
just cleaning to where they could get the things to unwrap the
Yeah.
tangles.
and every time they move, they stir up the bottom, and then you can't see
Yeah.
anything.
Can't see 'em.
Should we, how did the part that's missing, other than the the cable? Who made that? Did Ken make that the last time?
No, it was made by the company that made the dock.
Can we reach them and see how much it would cost to get a new one?
Yeah, but we get that, what do you call it, people, Office of Fishing and Boating Access would pay for that,
Okay.
because they paid for that dock. So I will, if we can't find it, we're hoping that it's still attached to a cable or the chain to the cable to it.
So you think that got caught on a boat and dragged out?
Yeah, it was
Wow.
the one cable. Wow. That came back was all, shredded so we don't know the status of the other cable.
Okay.
We're hoping, they were trying to find it so they could go down and grab the chain. And hoping that maybe that piece of aluminum is, and that's why he's hoping with maybe the camera, because he's not gonna disturb anything.
Should we go ahead and find out what the pricing on it is? I mean, cause if it isn't that much, go ahead and get one, as opposed to waiting until we
I think
define.
it's gonna be $1,000.
Well, let's just find out what it is.
But I'll ask the fishing and boating.
It's about, the top of the lake is about 13 million gallons per inch.
13 million to drop an inch?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
I get
Yeah,
12,626,600.
yeah, 13 million.
They say
Right.
27,154 per 1 acre, 1 inch.
Yep.
27,000.
And I put all that data in, it was
12
like
picks.
two meetings ago.
About 13 million, yeah.
And that's only coming.
And that's assuming you got no water coming in.
That's it.
That's the
Right.
problem.
Right.
Nothing happens.
Actually, that isn't the problem. The 13 million.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's-
how do you get rid of it?
And obviously, depending upon how fast it's going over the weir gates and so many inches and so
Right.
many wide,
Oh, yeah,
you can tell how many gallons a day are going out,
yep,
Correct.
which
okay.
varies every day.
Do we have anything else?
No.
Nothing.
Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
All right.
Who, you do?
I hate it.
All
Oh, did you?
M. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Unanimous.
Yeah.
And it is,
Yeah.
what time?
7:55.
7:24.
No.